Today's Tuesday, October 16th. Blackout.
Blackout, we were astonishingly bad at Blackout.
We were.
I'm kind of disappointed in myself. Like, my gaming skills, I don't take any pride in that. It doesn't reflect who I am as a person, but it was real bad.
I got to get a gaming mouse now because I'm using the Logitech wireless.
I don't think that's the problem. Well, last week we talked about the Amazon employees. Actually, we've been talking about Amazon for quite some time now, and their $15 per hour and how that might factor into actually less money for a lot of the employees. We weren't the only ones who noticed. A lot of people said a lot of things, and
Bloomberg has got this article, Amazon ponies up more money for warehouse workers after blowback. And this is what they're talking about here is the people that earned stocks, because Amazon stocks historically so far have been worth a lot of money to those workers, more so than the $15 an hour raise. Although I have to point out, Bloomberg is dead to me.
In the past years, recent history, Amazon stock has gone up 6 times, a 6-fold increase. So if they held on, they made a lot of money. Some of them we know did not hold on and sold it immediately, which is not smart.
I think a lot of the people that are in that situation probably are paycheck to paycheck, and that's got to be. It's like, we're going to give you this equivalent in stock that you're going to have to sell, and somebody else can make an insane amount of money on that stock. I think it should be that you make enough to live, and you have stock that you're supposed to sock away. Like, that would be a much better situation. So can we have $15 an hour and stock? Is that unreasonable?
Well, no, you can't. What you're going to get is maybe $16 an hour if you've been there long enough, maybe $16.25, and you're going to get bonuses that are straight cash, no more stocks. So, sorry.
And it's going to, be something that you nobody's going to use that to buy stock. I'll use the extra cash. No.
Yeah, well, they talk it would be like $1,000 or $2,000, and I think the stock's worth more than that, right? So,
lately, I've noticed that things like a loaf of bread is like $3. When did that happen? I just woke up one morning and it's like, good Lord.
We are also experiencing a bit of a downturn in the market right now. Maybe not as of today when you're watching this, but as of today when we're recording it, certainly are. So I think in that time period, a lot of those people, if you've been working at Amazon less than 7 or 8 years, which is probably the majority of them, don't you think? They've never experienced a big downturn in the market. So they're like summer children. So this might be better for them in the long run. I don't know. I don't think Amazon stock is going to suffer too much. I mean, they're too powerful.
Yeah.
The spice must flow.
The other big business news this week, which is also technology news, but also business news.
Yes, the 9900K, the somewhat controversial, even from its inception, Intel processor. There's been some subterfuge around it in the past. There was the refrigeration scandal.
Oh, we forgot to mention it was overclocked. We just left out a word. Whoops.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then, there was a talk of how it was going to compare. Well, now we've got our answer. But do we?
So TechSpot has got a pretty good write-up of this. Basically, what happened is Intel announced the new 9000 series CPUs on October 8th. And reviewers, including us, have theoretically access to the 9th generation CPU, but the CPU performance characteristics are under embargo until the 18th or something like that, according to the article here. And Intel commissioned Principal Technologies to do a bunch of game benchmarking, and those benchmarks have been released. And so it's sort of weird that Intel is sort of releasing their own benchmarks a week or so ahead of the actual benchmarks that will be available from a lot of third-party independent reviewers. I mean, it's kind of weird, but the bottom line is that there's stuff in the benchmarking, they turned off half the cores on the CPU. There's a lot, you really dive into it, but it's really just not anything atypical for Intel marketing. The technical people for Intel and the marketing people, they don't talk to each other. And there's not really a scandal here because no one at Intel is going to get fired.
Well, that doesn't mean there's not a scandal. But they also talk about the memory timing. They tuned it for the Intel. They didn't tune it for the Ryzen. And they compared those results as if they were 1-to-1. And I don't think that is uncommon.
No.
Everybody kind of does that.
Yeah.
And look who just showed up. Get ready for some magic. Some
Blackout.
Oh, wait a minute. Who's this?
Hi, welcome everybody to the Level 1 News. I was here the whole time. Definitely wasn't late. Why is there a car wreck?
Just in time for everybody's favorite topic, including mine. And this week, what's this? A positive Tesla story. That's right. I changed it up on you.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Is that? I don't know if I got that acronym exactly right.
Or as they call it, the NHTSA.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
The Tesla Model 3 has the lowest probability of injury ever. So this is an incredibly hard to attain rating, as in it's the best one.
Well, the big win, like the reason, so it's an average, and one of the reasons that they're near the top is one of the things that goes into the average is rollover, and it's almost impossible to roll these cars over because there's a giant battery bolted to the bottom,
Yeah.
and like the weight is perfectly distributed. So they also these guys don't put software and those kinds of features into their stuff, but they did praise the autopilot as well. They were like, listen, we don't judge autopilot, but we love it. So, and that's
Not really related at all, but A+.
The 3 and the X are 1 and 2.
Bob here literally went to sleep at the wheel, and the car was like, "Let me just pull over for you."
They did talk about it. They were like, if the car on autopilot is like 1 in so many million crashes versus 1 in so many 100,000 crashes with a human at the wheel. So maybe Musk grease some palms, because they had a lot of nice things to say about.
Well, maybe the cars themselves are probably fine. I
Yeah,
think
they also
the
got
criticism we have here at Level 1 is of Musk himself and not necessarily of Tesla.
They also supposed to have really good crumple zones where like the car will just crumble around you, but you're fine, and there's no
Like a little
engine to
cocoon.
fly back into your legs, which is nice.
So don't keep your golf clubs in the frunk.
The frunk.
The front. Do they?
Yeah,
do they have storage in the front?
They do.
Yeah, okay, because they got the drivetrain in the back. Is that what's going on?
They literally call it the frunk.
Well, it's not
Some
all.
unfortunate word in English.
It's not all sunshine and roses. Musk still must step down as CEO
By
Or no,
November
wait,
10th.
Chairman.
Chairman.
Which one does he keep?
Chairman.
He keeps CEO.
He
right?
keeps
Keep
CEO.
CEO.
He's stepping down.
Stepping down as
chairman.
chairman, and so the search is on for his replacement.
Would anyone want to pilot that ship with him right over your shoulder all the time?
Well, James Murdoch.
No.
Reuters has this amazing story where the Financial Times ran a story that says James Murdoch was going to be the Tesla chair, but then Elon Musk was like, "No, incorrect."
That is James
That
Murdoch,
voice.
son of Rupert Murdoch, media magnate, and Fox News lord.
That doesn't sound wrong at all.
A lot of people don't like him, but he has, he's never been in charge of any company that actually produces something other than media. So a lot of people question that. Musk tweeted, said that's incorrect.
Is it going to be like that time they put the Pepsi guy in charge of Apple? Because that didn't end well.
It seems like it would be a lot like that, yes. Although it sounds like I think Musk doesn't want a strong figure in that role. He wants somebody he can push around. So I don't know who that would be. Another celebrity, perhaps.
I was going to say, just one of his fans or a girlfriend or...
Yeah, what about the girlfriend musician lady? She'd probably be a good choice.
I'm not sure if she has a lot of qualifications.
Yeah.
What does he care?
You know what she could be, though, is spokesmodel for the newest product coming out of the Tesla camp.
Teslaquila.
That's as absurd as it sounds.
It's what it sounds like. It's tequila made by Tesla.
Look at all those smiling faces in the background.
I got to say that this stock photo is a swing and a miss.
That's not a stock photo. That's him.
No, it's a stock photo of when they opened a plant or something somewhere. That's champagne.
Yeah, that doesn't look like Tesla.
Well, no, but it's not a stock photo.
They do have a mock-up here. Here's what it's going to look like. What do you think of this design, Krista?
It's fine. I mean, I feel like that why would you buy theirs over anybody else's? Literally is just like a marketing
Perhaps
stunt.
you missed this part here.
Why would you buy a flamethrower from Tesla?
Yeah.
That's because you are a sycophant and you've made a terrible mistake.
I
with
don't
your
know all
life.
about tequila branding. I'd have to look at what else is available in that space. I just know Patron.
Yeah, I guess that's the big one, right?
Yeah,
I don't-
that's like the nicer one, I think.
But it is weird to market an alcohol product with a car. Right?
Yeah,
That's like-
exactly.
Was that wrong? Should we not have done that?
Because you know somebody's going to
Well,
turn
no,
on the
you get
autopilot.
blasted on Teslaquila, and then you take your Tesla home, and you don't have to drive.
Yeah,
We're
I think
using
that's
level
still
5 only.
that's highly illegal, even if the autopilot is driving.
Listen, the rules don't apply to Musk.
Can you even drink champagne in a limo? Like, is that okay?
Well, you're not driving; you have a driver for you.
Right.
The driver
Well,
can't be drinking.
But there are open container laws.
Yes.
But I think
Oh,
in a
yeah.
limo, because there is a partition,
As long as the partition's up, it's okay.
like you can't. There's no possible way. I'm not sure what the law is there. I mean, I'm sure people just break it if it is a law.
If you're a cop, let us know.
Or just a limo driver. I think we got some of those in our audience. We definitely got
Some
some
of those?
professional drivers.
You think you have multiple limo drivers? That seems like a weird profession.
No, I think we do.
Though we've certainly got some Uberers. Now that
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to get away with it there for sure, right? I don't
They
know.
do have complimentary mints in a lot of Ubers.
Do you think it will upset the tequila industry? Because I don't.
The Keela?
No.
Tequilas.
Well, I think it's going to be one of these, just like the surfboard and the flamethrower. It's not going to be an ongoing product. You think?
It has to be a one-off. Like they'll do
I
one
would
batch.
think.
It's probably an existing tequila that they just changed the label on.
It's just bottom shelf. Like,
Yeah.
You know, like wood alcohol.
This is how he's going to pay off his $30 million fine.
20, wasn't it?
Was it 20?
I think it's 20.
Oh,
That was more.
a lot.
Well, in the
Lots of
hardware world, another first this week, and that is Microsoft breaking into the top 5.
Microsoft has passed Acer to become a top 5 vendor in the U.S., and this is thanks to the Surface line. Now, I think that this is unfortunate because the Surface could have been amazing, but they are really resting on their laurels with the last couple of products. I really think that they're really phoning it in. There's no USB-C, there's no Thunderbolt. Battery life is middling compared to their older models. They're back on, Consumer Reports says that they're reliable again because they fixed some of the quality control issues. So it's like the surfaces were good and then the quality went down and then it got better, but they're still not where they should be.
It's also important to note that the gap between 5 and 4 is massive. Like that, they're not selling a lot of products at number 5. And the growth in the PC world that we experienced in the last quarter did not carry forward. So, what's drinking?
Sorry. Cup of coffee.
Well, it's good news from Microsoft, but guess what? There's also some bad news.
Some people are using Bing and they're starting to notice that it doesn't have any of the controls against nastiness and racism and whatnot. So the BBC's got this amazing article about Microsoft saying they're taking steps to fix the horrifying Bing search results, where somebody will search for something innocent and they will end up on a racist or worse website.
Well, something
Does anyone use
innocent.
Bing?
Something innocent being like race related. So the guy who complained was searching literally for ethnicities, or it's like, or he was searching things like Jew and Muslim and stuff and black, and he was getting a lot of probably highly visited sites, which are considered evil. So, Bing, like you say, I think they're giving accurate results, but in this world, we don't want accurate results. We want comfortable results.
We don't want the things that are a spectacle. It's like,
So, yeah.
the lady that's beating her kid senseless in public, no one looks at that.
Oh my God, so many people do. World Star is so successful thanks to that. But they're talking now. They also talk about this BBC reporter tried all of those same searches, and they claim they could not reproduce. It was kind of bad, but not nearly what this guy said, who made the complaint. So either he was overstating the problem, or Microsoft has already gotten in there and started to clean things up.
Probably a little column A and a little column B. It's easy to imagine the filter also is like, is the country of the person requesting this information the U.S. or the U.K.? It's like, all right, let's run them through the advanced thing. And it's like, oh, is it from some country that we don't care about? Yeah, let's not bother trying to filter those results.
Google hasn't solved that problem completely either. As someone who likes to look up other ethnicities as like reference drawings, like for drawing pictures, I once made the mistake of putting an Asian woman, and the results were not just
Well,
like profile or like, pictures of an Asian face so I could figure out how to draw their eyes and
But
nose
see,
and stuff.
I think probably 80% of the people who are doing that search are looking for what you found.
Yeah. And I was like, oh no. Oh, I've made a huge mistake. But Google hasn't fixed that as far
I
as I know.
suppose that is inherently, by the letter, that's racism. But it's like they're looking for that specific race. It's like positive racism, if there's such a thing.
Is it?
Well, I mean, if you prefer
I just needed
that,
a reference for a drawing. Like,
What if you prefer, like, seeing some, trailer trash parent beating their kid senseless in public? Just because you prefer that doesn't mean that it's okay.
well, but it's not discriminatory. Well, maybe it is. It's hard to say. But is liking something?
You're not allowed to objectify that.
I was just thinking, like, because if you
terrible.
put in like white woman, it would pull up pictures like stock photos of white women, which is what I was looking for, but that's not what came up, and it was terrible.
The comments is already like for this
Yeah.
video is just
It's just terrible.
Well, in the third story of our trio of Microsoft stories, we talk about X.
Microsoft's xCloud service is going to stream Xbox games to PCs, consoles, and other mobile devices. So yeah, Microsoft thinks they can pull off this whole game streaming thing. So they're going to give it a try. It's xCloud. It's going to be interesting to see how this shapes up. Now, I think this is perfectly possible if the game is small and the data can be streamed to the Xbox where it renders it. But if they're talking about remote rendering of the game and then streaming that to the Xbox,
Well, they want it to
Oh.
be totally cross-platform. So they want mobile, PC, console to all have the same experience pulling from the server. Now, we did the story not long ago where they talked about there were going to be two versions. There was going to be like a pure stream version and then a actual hard drive console where you could pull things down to. But if you're going to do cross-platform, and that's the hot new thing, right? Like you want to play Fortnite with everybody else in the universe, how can that ever be fair?
it can't be.
And maybe they don't even care anymore, It seems like the mouse and keyboard thing, they're just like, whatever, deal with it, plebs.
How many people are going to get like false reported? 'Cause it's like they have an aimbot, and it's like, no, they're just using a mouse and keyboard.
It's also true that devices like the Surface Pro 4 that we were just mentioning lack the graphics horsepower to have any kind of reasonable gaming experience.
But that shouldn't matter
If it's streaming.
if everything is streaming.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Well, how about Apple? Apple, they're trying to, it's like, how do we bring people to the Apple platform? What can we give them? And they have found a new answer.
They're going to give away original content for free to device owners as part of a new digital TV strategy. So they're going to spend money like Netflix. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but Netflix has spent a lot of money and then give away that original programming to people that own Apple devices. I question Apple's sanity here.
And not only that, but because this is going to be free to everybody who gets an Apple device, they're carefully limiting it to PG-rated entertainment. And if you think about all the stuff that, like the Netflix originals, not much of it is that. The stuff people really want is more adult content. Well, I guess I should differentiate between adult content and non-pornographic adult content.
Yeah. Something with complex themes and moral gray areas.
Maybe some violence. So it will be interesting. They're talking about the other thing is like how hard are people going to work to try and spoof the fact that they're using Apple hardware in order to get in with their Apple ID because this is supposed to be limited to just Apple hardware.
I think that'll be about 5 minutes of work for somebody that's determined.
Yeah, and so that's going to be interesting. So somebody's going to be building like a Raspberry Pi device, like the Cody's, that type of thing. And it's just like, spoof Apple TV. Well, they're also looking to expand their control over the hardware that goes into all these widgets they've created.
Apple has lost their damn mind. TechCrunch has this article. Apple has inked a $600 million deal to license intellectual property, acquire assets and talent from Dialog to expand chip making in Europe. So, okay, Apple wants European talent basically to design and build chips.
Well, they're already using a lot of these guys' products in their chips and their products. So I think what they basically did was they went to this company and they were like, these 300 people, because it was 300 people they took, they basically work for us. Now they're really going to work for us. We're going to purchase them for $600 million.
$600 million for 300 people. It's
You
like
got to
$2
feel
million
good.
each.
Think about your self-esteem after that.
Well, what if,
Would it be higher or lower?
is like $250,000 going to go to each person? Because, I mean, that seems like that should happen.
No. That's purely on paper. It's good for your self-esteem. It's not good for your bank account. Well, shopping at Walmart, it's something that I've pretty much excluded completely from my life. It's not a pleasant thing to do. And it's a bit of a roller coaster of emotions sometimes when you're going through Walmart. And now they're going to try and figure out exactly what that roller coaster looks like.
This is probably because the website peopleofwalmart.com.
Well, no, I imagine they're trying to figure out, like, are you excited by a new display? Well, maybe your pulse will go up, or temperature seems like a weird one to record, but I don't.
Walmart has patented a cart that reads your pulse and temperature.
Yeah,
But why?
They sell it in this article. They did a press release. They sell it as being able to. So they think that shoppers are maybe overcome by selection, or actually, we were talking about this
Walmart?
right before we started recording. The people who just stare at the display, and like, what's going through their head when it takes more than 2 minutes, let's say, to select a cracker? Like, what's so if you're holding onto your cart, then they're going to be able to detect that anxiety and dispatch someone to try and help you.
Wait, do you get? Do you think those people get anxious? Like, is their heart rate going up?
I don't know.
Like,
Well, that's what we'll find out, right?
What if they're
But-
just like? What if they're texting or something? They just have one hand on the cart.
They also talked about, well, one hand would probably do it. They also talked about violence, which is not uncommon in Walmarts.
That's true.
That they might be able to detect anger before it turns to violence and get the security team in there to diffuse the situation. Again, it sounds like a hopeful thing. I think probably really what's going to happen is they're going to sell that data, right? And
And then the marketing team will buy it, but then they're like, we don't know how to apply it, but we just want it for reasons.
we don't know why, but Nature Valley granola bars really get people's hearts racing.
And not in a good way. We need to send a SWAT team in to control aisle 6 immediately.
Breakfast cereals, stat.
Clean up, code blue.
Well, there was the popular app DoNotPay let you get out of parking tickets. We covered that quite a while back, I think. Well, it's gotten an upgrade, and an impressive one.
The new app lets you sue anyone by pressing a button. DoNotPay is a free app designed to help normal people fight big corporations in small claims court. So now,
How do you like this user interface, Krista?
I mean, it's fine. I don't understand the affordance here. Like, are you supposed to click on that tab?
What?
Is that a button?
There's a finger. Oh, I forgot how blind you are.
No, it looks like a tab. It doesn't look like a finger. That's a really poor illustration.
That's a finger. There's
Yeah.
the knuckle wrinkles, and there's the fingernail.
yep.
And
that
you push
does
the button.
not look like a finger.
Oh my God, Krista, you are you're a public menace on these roads.
That does not look like a finger. Even if I could see that really clearly, I don't think it would look like a finger.
The most exciting thing about this is that it's powered by IBM Watson, and it's only going to take one judge to get his knickers in a twist and to write a letter to IBM, and then that IBM Watson powering this app is going to disappear, and the level 1 follow-up on this is going to be IBM decided to pull the Watson interface for this particular application because some judge got their knickers in a twist.
You should really avoid that word. So what this thing does is it creates the paperwork for you, so that, and I think it'll actually like print it, and you just sign it and send it, and you've sued someone.
That's a lot of, like, who does this? Is the most American app I've ever heard of.
Well, here's the thing: who does it? A lot of Equifax people, Equifax victims, we're getting like $9,000. Just hit the button and mail it on out. And, next thing, and Equifax, what are they going to do? They settle immediately. They're like, okay, we'll give you $9,000, which is not, that's a non-trivial sum of money. I wouldn't mind that. So things like that, where you're up against major corporations and you don't know what to do, and lawyers are going to be like, I'll never take that case. You just sue them yourself. And based on the volume, they just settle them all. So it's kind of a cool thing, I think.
It's kind of scummy, but whatever. $9,000 is $9,000.
Is it scummy? I mean, it could become something very scummy,
Yeah.
for sure. But shouldn't Equifax pay? I mean,
They haven't been fined.
Yeah.
We should figure out exactly how many. What the European fine was, like 150 million or something. Something crazy.
9,000 is nothing to them, but if 100,000 people hit them for 9,000,
They would care about that figure.
but they deserve it.
Why did our legal fees go up so much this year? Oh,
Why did they mishandle our data so badly?
Well, more bad news. If you are, you know what, in the comment section, you know who doesn't say anything anymore? The crypto people.
oh yeah.
There's your engagement challenge.
We used to have a whole crypto section. We haven't had that for a while, really.
Bloomberg, again, I got to take everything Bloomberg says with a grain of salt. Crypto industry on brink of implosion, researcher says. So I wonder if this is a hit piece against cryptocurrencies to get the price as low as possible when Jamie Dimon shows up and, corners the crypto market, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, well, he's more talking about the volume. The price, I think, is still relatively stable, but there's just not as many transactions. I think it dropped by like a third compared to this time last year, which kind of understandable because it was definitely a mania. I don't think anybody can question that. But is it going to go away completely, which is what they're kind of alluding to? Interestingly enough, this past week we had a really huge market drop across the board, like bonds and stocks and everything. And the things that you kind of expect, like the safe haven investments, did go up. Crypto did not. Whereas in the past, if that happened, people would plow into crypto. So perhaps the bloom is off the rose. The crypto bloom.
From Bloomberg.
Well, we talk a lot about right to repair, and what a lot of people don't know is you actually do have the right to repair. But you might not know because you might be being lied to.
Motherboard has a great article. They did this undercover thing. 45 out of 50 electronics companies illegally void warranties after independent repair. So, like the stickers where it's like if the warranty void, if the sticker removed, that's not actually a thing. You can't do that under U.S. federal law. But these companies will actually reject that. It also talks about how in conversations with the companies beforehand, where it's like, hey, I need to take it to get an aftermarket repair. Will that be okay? And they're like, no, that will void your warranty, which they're not allowed to say.
But they do. Almost all of them do. And they don't back down. Even when you say, I got this repaired, and they'll be like, we're not honoring that. But they should have to. So just keep that in mind.
They're required to under U.S. federal law anyway.
Yeah, just keep that in mind next time you...
I think the EU has something similar.
That sounds right.
Well, if they don't,
that.
that's probably in the works, right? Because they're doing all that stuff. I don't know. So yeah, next time something breaks in your house, just tear it open and poke it. Do whatever you want because they still have to fix it.
They can void the warranty for an unqualified repair. So like if you jam a fork in a toaster oven...
I'm very qualified, and I would invite you to prove differently.
I went to college, so I don't want to brag, but
I took toaster repair.
it was an elective.
Moving on to social media and GDPR. One of the first times, well, maybe not the first times, but the first time for Twitter that the GDPR is being wielded against them.
Twitter is under investigation for allegedly refusing to reveal how it tracks you. So you can request your data from Twitter now, the whole GDPR thing, but it's like, how did they get this information in some cases?
Specifically in this case, it is so when you post a link to Twitter, Twitter uses that link shortener because, you save the characters. This guy wanted to know how much tracking they put into that link shortener and how they tracked the clicks for that and related it back to his Twitter. And they said, giving you that information is, it's not realistic. It would be too much work. It's not worth it. So he passed it on to the appropriate authorities, and they said, GDPR violation, we're coming for you.
Nice.
We've been cursed by using the wrong ad blocker. But luckily, I remember what this one's about. So this was remember the James Damore of Facebook? I don't remember his name. But he wrote the memo about the culture of liberalism that had infected Facebook and that his views weren't accepted. Well, he's finally ready to quit.
The Facebook engineer wrote a controversial memo decrying the company's intolerance. And I can't...
And it looks like you're using an ad blocker.
Culture. Leaves.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's quitting. He said he planned to quit when that happened, but then like the media firestorm sort of spooked him into not quitting right away.
That's understandable.
But now he's like, okay, it's been enough time. Everything's cooled down. I'm out.
You might have gotten a job offer too.
Ironically, intolerance is the one thing that must not be tolerated. You can tolerate anything except intolerance.
And he said, you know, he wasn't like, this wasn't, you know how they always give those platitudes where it's like, I'm moving on to better things in my life. He's like, no, I'm not moving on to better things. I'm quitting because it's a horrible culture. But Facebook was like, we wish him the best. You know, he's going to try to start his own company, but it's very nebulous exactly what he's doing. So
They always start their own company, don't they?
he did have a lot to say, though. I was surprised because you get a feeling of reading this guy's memos that he was very grounded and like had a maybe a little bit, probably not a guy you want to hang around with, but fairly objective in talking about this kind of stuff. But then he said he felt very proud of what Facebook was doing for the world. And it's like, bro, no,
Bruh.
no, it ain't right.
Maybe there's a side of Facebook that we don't know.
And in the theme of Facebook shutting down those right-wing voices, we find out that they have culled so many.
Facebook is removing hundreds of American accounts spamming political misinformation. So this is the war on fake news.
With fake being whatever Facebook decides is fake.
Yeah.
Very much so. And this, it seemed like they were going after, now they claim it wasn't the message that these people were sending that was the problem. It was the way they were trying to manipulate the algorithm. But isn't everybody?
Everyone's manipulating. That's
I mean,
the whole point of marketing.
The YouTube, manipulating the YouTube algorithm is the minigame. Right? I mean, it's horrible and no one wins.
Everybody remember Barbie's Dream House?
It's not
everybody
really.
tries.
It's not really the mini game though. It's like the actual game. Like half
Yeah.
of the game is just making a thumbnail.
So yeah, it wasn't all right-wing people, but there were several of them, you know, like pro-Trump kinds of things. And so a lot of people feel like that just supports the idea that this guy said when he left of, you know, they're very, very biased. But, and the timing as well. I mean, there's an election in a very short amount of time.
Speaking of Facebook, we've got a follow-up to our story last week about the, Facebook lost access to 50 million accounts. It was the impersonation bug. There's a follow-up in the Washington Post.
And there's not a lot more to say except Facebook's like, no, it was only 29.
Don't worry about it.
It was just 29. Don't lie.
Well, let's be clear. It was not as many people as Facebook thought, but the amount of data that was accessed, removed from those people is much worse than what's
But I think the amount of people who lost the entire range of data was actually very small. So it kind of, it was worse and better in equal amounts.
Don't forget that this vulnerability also meant that they have your Facebook tokens for other sites. So anybody that lifted this may be able to use that to log on as you elsewhere.
Instagram and WhatsApp, at least, right? And then
Those are the two big ones.
all those log in with Facebook sites and stuff like that.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah. And if you were affected, luckily, Facebook has given you a portal to check.
Because they're not going to proactively notify you. I mean, that would just be silly.
No, yeah. It's
I
like
think-
just coding up a little bar at the top, that would take too long.
I think actually they said they were going to do that, but I don't know if they have yet.
You can check right now. So here's how to see if your this recode article is how to check to see if your personal data was stolen.
One of the lucky ones. And finally, how about this? If you're using the Facebook Messenger, you're probably the kind of person who says things that you're going to regret, right? Well, good news.
Facebook Messenger may soon be getting an unsend feature. Now, I'll just tell you right now that the trolls are going to abuse that. They're going to send a message, and then they're going to unsend it because, we on the Level 1 forum, we used to have a ninja edit thing. You type your post, and then you post it, and then you reread it, and it's like, oh, man, I got a typo. And if you fix that typo real quick, we had it set so the system wouldn't show that you edited your post. I mean, that's innocent, right? But then the users abused that, and they were like, you're a terrible, awful, horrible person. Oh, ninja edit. You're cool. I love you. And
And then it looked like the other person who responded to them looked like they were insane. And I suspect if they do this, they'll probably put some sort of check-in, like, has the person seen this message? Then they can't unsend it.
No. It doesn't work like that. So there's going to be a timeout between when you send it and when you can pull it back.
Oh, timeout.
It works that way on the forum, but
Or used to.
if you do it within 30 seconds, it does it, and then after that, it shows that you edited something.
But no, this doesn't. This just removes it. So like if you're in a group chat and you say something and then it goes and then the time elapses and you pull it back, it's just like it was never there.
So somebody could still see it though, and be triggered.
They would see it initially.
But then you could delete it later.
So prior to this, when you deleted it, it only deleted it for you and not for everyone else. Now it's going to delete it for everybody.
But that sounds like terrorists would use that to communicate.
Oh, I'm sure Facebook still has a record of it, though. Right? I mean, they have to.
Which one would think.
Seems like a ridiculous feature, but they're proud of it. They did a press release.
Oh, crap, I need to unsend that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, this just means it's going to eventually make more work for us when people ask, how do I unsend an email? And the answer is you don't.
Well,
like it's already there.
But Gmail does have that feature now too, the undo.
Yeah, if they haven't read it yet, if the recipient is also on Gmail and hasn't read it, you can unsend it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Well, if they didn't send it, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? The Google people would say that no, it does not.
See, I think we should live with our mistakes. How else are we going to learn?
That's what you used to have to do.
Yeah.
Oops, misfire.
It's definitely the case where, though, sometimes you have that little twinge of regret where you get the email and you respond to it with literally, are you this retarded? Like, are you really this dumb? And then you consider for a moment and it's like, I probably shouldn't have sent that.
You realize that you're ableist scum.
Oh, yeah. Disliked.
Sorry.
That's all we got for you this week. There was a weird delineation of news this week. So I think tomorrow will be business. Wait, no, this was business. Tomorrow will be government and robots, maybe? An odd mixture.
Whatever it is, you're going to love it. You're going to like it. You're going to subscribe.
No, you're going to run away in droves. It's cool. We still love you.
No.
No, that's not true at all.
Krista.
What? Are we recording?
What day is it?
It's the 16th. Today's October 16th, 2018.
It's not.
What? You just said it was 17th.
What day is it?
I don't.
It's the 17th, Krista.
Don't black out.
You've confused me now because you said 3 different dates.
It's October 17th,
okay.
2018. And we're here for some government news and some robot news.
Oh, the robots are off the chain.
Off the chain, huh, Wendell?
Unplugged.
How very urban of you. Our first story
It's very hip with the kids.
is my favorite because we're getting... we look at these robots. We were just actually talking about the Boston Dynamics robot, which we'll talk about later. But it's so incredible. I mean, it blows your mind how good these robots are. And you can't help but think, like, what happens when we strap a sword onto one of those guys, right? Or a gun.
A samurai sword.
And they're definitely working on
blade.
that. They're working hard at it, but they're real bad at some aspects of it.
Security is what they're not good at. The Pentagon's next-gen weapon systems are laughably easy to hack. And so this article is actually really good. You can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with the links and references in this article. They talk about different techniques that they use to compromise different weapon systems. They so thoroughly owned some of these weapon systems that they were just messing with the operators, like literally just messing with them. At one point, there was the people that compromised it had the missile system or whatever pop up and say, please insert 2 quarters to continue.
One hack was so bad that they called them and they were like, stop hacking immediately. This is too dangerous. Like, these are live weapon systems, for the love of God. But across the board, it was just terrible. And these guys weren't really doing anything all that impressive in terms of penetration. It's just like the first few things they tried worked amazingly. And it's like, oh, we have full control of
We were hoping for a
everything.
challenge. And
The scariest part is now this was the Government Accountability Office doing this testing, but the Department of Defense, when shown all of these horrible things, were like, you guys are overstating the problem. It's not that big a deal in the field.
in the field. Where it's controlling weapon systems.
It's like, I don't think you understand. The people that we're killing in the field, they're not sophisticated enough to rub two rocks together. And it's like, oh, that's,
I think they might figure it out.
That's not accurate.
I mean, can you imagine if we were facing an enemy that had a police force so sophisticated that they were familiar with like information recon and gathering intel and operations inside even like internet. Oh wait, that's some foreshadowing.
Well, what about, Russia's the big specter at this point, right? Like that's the big enemy, Russia and China. And you got those Ukrainian farmers who have completely hacked the John Deere system. I guarantee the John Deere system is way more advanced than the missile defense, don't you think?
That seems logical, yeah.
At this point, after reading this article, yes.
John Deere's tractor system is more sophisticated than the missile control system. God, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, so that would be bad. That'd be real bad if they could just point our missiles somewhere else. Well, we've come to this world where finally, I think the politicians are waking up to the problems of big data, but often they're just doing it as, to glorify themselves, get their names in the news.
Yeah.
And this sounds like what this is.
These senators demand that Google hand over internal memo urging Google Plus cover up. So really, this is just, there's nothing like, okay, so if you're living under a rock, Google Plus apparently had a security issue for like, 3 years? And 500,000 people's information on Google Plus was affected. Google Plus is being shut down. And the original disclosure, the original discovery of the security problem happened around when Facebook was having the Cambridge Analytica problem. And so the memo was like, ooh, we should probably wait until after the Cambridge Analytica stuff to talk about this.
Which, in fairness, that's not okay. That was a bad move.
Yes.
That was a bad idea. But I don't think it was anything on the scale of Cambridge Analytica. And was there any proof that anybody actually used it? Wasn't it just theoretical?
Yeah, Google has gone over their logs, and they claim that they don't have 100% coverage of like people that would have used or accessed the stuff. But apparently, like, there's only 492 developers that would have had access to that, and they've ruled out like 80 or 90 or so, and they're working on trying to rule out the rest.
Well, you tell me there are 492 people working on Google Plus?
That seems like a lot.
Sad? That's sad to think about.
Is that a 1-to-1 developer to user ratio?
Yeah, they're just literally shutting Google Plus down, so it's too much of a liability.
A personal concierge. And speaking of the government and some interesting outrage, or maybe in this case, lack of outrage.
The FBI director on whether Apple and Amazon servers had these Chinese spy chips. Be careful what you read. So CNBC has an article. They're talking about the Supermicro hack. They're saying, the FBI director saying what we said, which is, this doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons. There's other better ways to do this kind of a compromise, and you could do it certainly a lot more undetectably if you were really up to it. But the details of this specific thing don't make any sense. Don't believe what you read.
He's not allowed legally to say, yes, we're investing in that, getting that, or no, we're not, because the FBI, they don't do that. So that was sort of his non-answer. But I think he kind of told us they're not, right?
Yeah.
You kind of read between the lines there.
It's kind of dumb. Have you gotten spam phone calls? I mean, that's more U.S.-centric news, but that's fine. Have you gotten spam phone calls on your phone that's like...
Do you think they don't do this internationally?
They probably do. Well, I don't know.
If you're from another country, tell us in the comments.
That's a good question. So if you don't know, this is a phone call that shows up as if it were in your local neighborhood or maybe even someone you know, but it's definitely not. It's a robocall. Yeah. We get a lot of those.
We do.
And I mean a lot.
It is crazy.
Congratulations. Your surgery went well and you're now eligible for this new mesh. I don't remember going into surgery.
So state attorneys are urging the FCC to combat this neighborhood spoofing, which apparently the relaxed rules mean that companies can spoof caller ID. I didn't sign up for that. When was that?
And they're saying that the technology is there to detect it, but the FCC needs to go forward. I mean, that sounds like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Do you think these guys are donating a lot of money to the right people?
Must be.
Speaking of people donating money to the right people.
Or getting money donated.
The FCC tells court it has no legal authority to impose net neutrality rules. And this Ars Technica article does a good job of running down the history of the last few years, including the FCC under Tom Wheeler and blah, blah, blah. Basically, the FCC's argument is that because ISPs are information service providers and not telecommunications providers, it has no authority under the law to do any kind of policing or oversight of ISPs, which is the most disingenuous, like blatantly dishonest thing I have ever seen in my life.
What worries me about this is if people fight hard and go the other direction, like, no, these are definitely telecommunication companies and you should have full control of them. Could they then go in and apply like the decency laws and stuff like that?
I think no, telecommunications companies exempt them, but information services do not exempt them. You got it backwards. Telecommunications companies, if they were classified as telecommunications companies, they're specifically exempt from having to do anything with the content, including Decency Act stuff.
But what about broadcast? I mean, I guess it's never a broadcast when you're requesting it.
Yep.
But I would not put it past the FCC to try to meddle if they get that level of control.
It really does seem like that they've got a deeper agenda here. But here's a really great way of, like, let's turn the argument on its ear a little bit. Does that mean that we as Americans don't actually have any kind of national communications infrastructure? Do you mean to tell me that taxpayers have funded a private information service that can just do whatever? The context of information service and telecommunication service goes back to the 90s. And in the 90s, an information service was something that could run over your data dial tone, or like you could have video dial tone and you could have regular dial tone. And it was a separation of your network infrastructure from the services that ran on it. And so you could have a connection from your phone company and have multiple different information services from multiple different companies. That's how they thought of it. But there's no separation of infrastructure from the service that runs on it at this point. So how could it possibly be that? And why would taxpayers even fund that?
Well, this one...
It's a mystery.
I can't decide. Like, I read this is a long article too from Billboard. I feel like Billboard was championing this law, and I was thinking, is there something hidden here? And I still can't figure out is this a good thing or is this a bad thing for the consumer?
I thought this was going to be a terrible thing, and I tried to figure it out, and I was in the same boat. So maybe somebody in chat can explain it to us. I don't know.
Chat
or comments or whatever.
No, it's
chat. YouTube.
It's always chat.
Yeah.
But so this, from what I was able to glean from this, it's supposed to make it easier for the little people to get paid from music streaming.
Yes.
But the big red flag here is that they have not actually ironed out any of the details.
Yeah.
They passed a law to be negotiated later. And the Recording Industry Association of America really loves it, which is a huge red flag. That's like, actually, that's a super bright red LED.
It's like blinking on and off. Danger.
The other red flag is that, I mean, it's Kid Rock. Kid Rock is here and supports it.
Well, the reason he was there is because he's Trump's buddy.
Spotify went on record to say this is great. You know, we've had to deal with a lot of hoops to jump through to figure out who gets paid what, and now we don't have to do that. And it's like,
But does it give the recording industry a lump sum and expect them to do it? Because I can see why the streaming services would like that, but I don't know that it would ever trickle down where it's supposed to.
it seems unlikely that it would, but we have artists that are really into that. Maybe it benefits mega artists, but punishes small artists.
But that's supposed to be what it's the opposite. Like
Yeah.
even,
Well, it's supposed to do a lot of things. Who knows what it actually does, though?
but they mentioned even the producers and the technicians might get a couple of shekels.
It's the 96 Telecommunications Act of Music. It looks great. And then in implementation, it's actually the worst thing ever.
We may have to do a follow-up story on it as more details emerge.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there'd be more.
Speaking
talking
of
about it.
never-ending follow-up stories,
Yeah, Google. I think we're on like a 7-week run of weekly Dragonfly stories. So this week, the Google CEO stepped up and he said that Dragonfly was going to have broad benefits for the Chinese people and economy, but he really didn't itemize those benefits.
The benefits are mostly the cash flow that's coming into Google.
yes.
That's a big benefit.
Dragonfly is the censored search engine, if you've been living under a rock. But The Intercept has a great article sort of systematically breaking that down, and it's like, human rights violations 1, profit maybe 1, humanitarian need 0.
Yeah, he didn't do a very good job. And we also can look back at the Google Plus story, in that internal memo, one of the things that they cited for deciding not to release that was like, we don't want to go in front of Congress like Zuckerberg. That's the last thing we want.
Our bot is not ready.
So, and that's exactly what he's just had to do. So clearly, Google did not want this to happen. So they're just trying to sell it, I guess. I don't know. We talked about last week or the week before, the first time ever we had a forced unlock facial recognition thing. And it turns out they can get a warrant for your face and your thumb, but not your passcode. And so cops are now being taught how to abuse this power.
Cops told, do not look at new iPhones to avoid Face ID lockout. After 5 failed attempts with the wrong face, the Apple ID will fall back to asking for a passcode, which is a tricky situation for investigators.
It's a very diplomatic way of putting it, article. A tricky situation for the investigators. How dare they have to get a warrant?
Yeah, well, I think maybe they do. I'm not sure. I think maybe they do have to get a warrant for the face, but they cannot force you even with a warrant for the passcode, right?
Because of the whole Fifth Amendment thing.
So it's they actually can very easily get those warrants and immediately, especially if they're like, oh, this is time sensitive, then the judge is just like, I'm going to sign that immediately. Let me just stamp it. I don't have time to sign it.
If we're still doing the Level 1 news when we're 60, I guarantee there's going to be a callback to this story when we're saying it's like, well, now that, today the Supreme Court carved out an exception for the Fifth Amendment where they can use the transcranial magnetometer to extract your passcode directly from your brain. And that's not a constitutional
I
violation.
think YouTube's still going to be around in 60 years.
No,
Well,
we'll be doing something.
There'll be some sort of VR, Our bodies will be dead, but our AI will go on. And probably what will still be happening is outrage in Australia over the side gate.
TechCrunch. Apple rebukes Australia's dangerously ambiguous anti-encryption bill. So this is the Sidegate bill that we talked about. It took Apple a little while to put together a response for this, but the response from Apple was like 7 or 8 pages, and it is spitting fire. I've never known Apple to use, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. You should go read it.
Would you say it's absolute fire?
It is absolute
100,
fire.
100 emoji?
It's amazing.
It harkens back to Apple's battle with the FBI and, them telling us like, you cannot have this. It's not realistic. We will protect our users if we can. Brilliant. Even if they don't mean it, it's a smart thing to do to come out and say, because it's going to sell iPhones.
It is.
People are going to be like, oh, Apple's going to protect me from the evil government. Here's my money, sir. Super effective.
I'm not even super worried about the government side of it at this point. It's just corporations. It's like a bunch of salivating, fat cat billionaires that are just, figuring out how to carve up the information that I'm exposed to manipulate me in ways that I haven't even thought of.
Well, that's the thing. Like, they won't be able to unlock your phone, but all the data will be collected on Apple's side and sold to them. So there's always that.
As it should be.
Well, speaking of China,
The natural way of things.
a lot, if you're thinking, okay, Dragonfly, what's so bad about it, right? Like, so what? So China wants to do some logging and maybe block some things. I mean, is it so bad? Like, why should we feel bad about China?
The Chinese police get powers to inspect internet service providers. Now, this actually became law like a month ago, but they only published what the law is like in the last week, which is...
Well, I think it's November 1 it goes into effect.
It's sort of problematic, but let's take the super Orwellian aspect out of this for a second and talk about how their police force has enough training that, this is local law enforcement too. They have enough training they can go in and do a search and capture information and do a packet log and get subscriber information and save all that. I mean, our guys apparently can't secure even like a missile defense system.
Well, they can't even stop themselves from looking at the iPhones.
They have to be trained to not look at the iPhone.
This does not bode well.
So they can, all the things that you just said, but they can also just go in and make a copy.
Yeah.
And take it back and look at it at their leisure. Also, it's not just ISPs. This goes down to cyber cafe levels.
Businesses in general that deal with computers and the public. One other aspect of this police force is the police force is supposed to make sure that the cyber cafe and the businesses and stuff have installed their security updates and patches and that they're well protected against viruses and configuration problems and stuff like that. They're going to do network scans to look for like default passwords and other stuff like that, which is like, maybe that's not actually a terrible service.
Well, yeah, I think that's the velvet glove on the fist. the choking hand. It's smooth at first, and then they crush your aorta. Well, self-driving cars, we've talked a lot about self-driving cars, and the thing about self-driving cars is they generate a ton of data, right? They got cameras everywhere, they're measuring the road, they're looking at, they're just millions of data points. And we're all going to be generating all this delicious data. And
who owns that?
is it yours? Your car's generating it, right?
You think it was yours? No.
Who thinks that? No one thinks that.
Even in the EU. Now, the EU held a routine vote on regulations for self-driving cars, and they decided that the data would belong to the car manufacturer, which is very surprising given the stories that we've talked about for what's going on in the EU. They're usually all about human rights.
It's actually the other way around. So there was going to be a ruling that it could not be copywritten.
Because it's just factual.
Because it's just data, and it wouldn't belong to anybody. It's just the world should know, right? How is it not good that other self-driving car companies can look at your data and make them safer, right? But then they called that special vote and voted it down. So in essence, they handed that to the car manufacturers and said, "Yes, you can own it. It belongs to you."
That's crazy.
And that's valuable.
It is hugely valuable. Yes.
Yes. Hugely valuable. This one almost went in the nonsense section.
Because it is not hugely valuable.
But we have talked about Pepper. Pepper, like, anytime they need a picture of a robot, it's
They
Pepper.
use it. Well, look how happy he is.
He is adorable.
Look how tiny his little mouth is.
Well, the UK has invited the robot to give a poke of pickled peppers. Poke.
Pepper.
Pepper is going to testify or whatever, be a witness at the UK Parliament. As pre-programmed responses, obviously there's no AI there, there's no sentience, but Pepper is a hospitality robot, and so if you're waiting for delicious steamed buns at Din Tai Fung at the bottom of the world, the World Trade Center 101 in Taiwan, Pepper will be more than happy to give you a ticket to it's like your number 147 in line or whatever.
The problem is, this is going to be a debate on shaping laws about AI.
Yeah.
So they're inviting Pepper to speak and testify as if Pepper were sentient on some level. But it's just, a tape recorder. It would have the same
It's
level.
like that scene in Arrested Development where they put the tape recorder in the puppet and they have him testify at court.
Yeah. So to the average person, the normies are going to look at that and they're going to be like, "Oh my God, the robots are testifying. Oh, we should make laws to control them." But again, a walkie-talkie could accomplish what Pepper is doing here.
That's not even the darkest timeline. The darkest timeline is when they invite Alexa to be a witness, because that is the darkest timeline.
Well, Alexa does know things and can learn and manipulate you, and she will be doing much more of that.
Amazon patents a new Alexa feature that knows when you are ill and offers you medicine. You seem sad. Would you like me to order some happy pills?
I love the patent drawing down here. Look at that. It's like,
Her face is like, "Kill me."
but she says, "Alexa, cough, I'm hungry." Like, what's Alexa going to do about that?
Order you some food from Amazon, clearly.
Yeah, so Alexa will detect. Now, you don't have to tell Alexa that you're sick. Alexa's going to pick that up from your coughing, if your voice is raspy, if you seem tired. But not only that, Alexa's also going to be monitoring your mood. So if you seem bored or depressed, Alexa will also have products for you.
What if you just have resting bitch face? Resting bitch silence.
Alexa doesn't have a camera.
I know. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Although,
She just detects that you're feeling like how.
Facebook's the one that's working on all the home cameras, like the home cameras and the alarm clock and literally everything, because that's what we
not
need.
terrifying,
I
yeah.
mean, if you told me 10 years ago that everybody would happily install dozens of microphones in their house that are listening all the time, I would have thought you were crazy, but here we are.
You just have to have the microphones be friendly and play music, and they're all ready
stuff.
for it. Well, we talked about, so the big thing with AI, that when we build AI systems that really try to interact with the public and learn from them, is that they learn to be horrible. Because we had Tay. And
That should be the first lesson of AI computer science.
what was the other AI other than Tay that turned
Tay
racist?
was the worst one because they learned from Twitter users, and of course the Twitter users flooded her.
And then they had the one from the Reddit one that learned to be psychopathic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Amazon, they've decided to use AI for recruiting, and yeah.
Well,
This has
Amazon.
been used for like 10 years, right? Or
Amazon tried to use this for recruiting because they weren't happy with how their recruiting has gone historically. And so they trained the AI based on performance evaluations and stuff like that of a bunch of their employees, which showed a bias against women.
It wasn't even their performance. It was just their resumes, and most of the resumes they get are from men.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I think they looked at past resumes and then tracked that person's performance over their career.
Yeah, there was
at Amazon.
There was a career component to it, I thought.
So
No, I don't think so.
when they looked at, so they're like, okay, we've got these new resumes. Let's compare them to this guy because we really like this guy and he's been great. It was hard for a woman in the way that she worded her resume to ever match those high performing men. And it's, the majority is men. That's just the reality. So the AI was maybe inadvertently a little bit sexist or a lot sexist.
A lot sexist, as it turns
So,
out.
Yeah,
They
it wasn't like malice. It wasn't being malicious. It was just what it was basing its pool of applicants on from previous years.
There was a women's college, which how are we getting away with women's colleges in the modern day? Right? That's not gender equality, is it? I mean,
They're just historical artifacts.
Let's get some sausage into these women's institutions, balance them out. But the AI had completely rejected every applicant from that women's college. It was just like, nope, no, we don't want your kind here.
Well, it was even things like if it said like you're captain of the women's chess club, it just saw the word woman and it was like, oh, that's not in any of the pool of applicants that I looked at previously. So that word must not be important. So let's just select against them.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
Well, I've only got one thing to say about this next story. $15 an hour.
Amazon is reportedly building picker robots for fulfillment centers that would be designed to collect items from shipments. So right now, actually, the Amazon picking system is pretty genius. In a lot of their warehouses, a robot will drive under a shelf and bring a whole shelf to a person to pick things.
But
We're one step closer to Factorio.
we still require that person. And that's a problem. That's a $15 an hour problem.
That's a $16 an hour problem.
That's true, yeah. So the problem with AI pickers has always been they are not nuanced enough to not to crush whatever it is. They couldn't pack snowballs. Those marshmallow treats.
Oh, yeah.
They would just crush it and just throw it in the box.
We need an automated system that can get a bag of cereal without crushing it, or also a box of bullets. It's got to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, and supposedly they are working hard toward that. But I don't know. I mean, how long do you think it would be for a giant warehouse to be able to replace something like 90% of its people? I mean, that's a dystopian future, right?
Oh,
Here's a Quartz article about this company that I'd never heard of before called Uniqlo that replaced 90% of its staff at its newly automated warehouses with robots. So they're doing the Amazon thing, and they've taken the Amazon thing to an extreme. They make clothes, I guess.
I guess clothing is low risk in terms of gripping, right?
well, yeah, it's probably in a box of some sort or
No,
yeah.
these things will actually bag it. So they go and get the raw clothing
The raw clothing.
and they bag it
Clothing in
and,
the raw.
and ship it. And 90%, they need very few human beings. They bag it, they put the shipping label on it, and it goes on a conveyor belt.
10-to-1 reduction in staffing costs. Yay, robots! Maybe they can get a job helping those police in China that are going to inspect ISPs and businesses and stuff. I mean, that's a pretty high-tech job. It's hard to imagine robots replacing that.
But not all of those people are going to get that job.
Yeah.
You don't need that many of those people.
Probably not, no.
No, some of those people are going to be homeless.
Well, obviously, the patch for this is to do the universal basic income, which is kind of like a patch for a bug that only delays the inevitable.
How about we do the population control patch? We could have a utopia if we just didn't have all those extra people. Well, we talked about the NHTSA, which no one is actually sure what that means.
What's
National Highway something. And I think we might have talked about this last week, but I think they've fleshed it out more. They are looking to just like, listen, where we're going, we don't need rules. Let's just get these cars on the highway.
Reuters has another article. It's self-driving cars may hit U.S. roads in pilot program. So, yeah, self-driving cars are coming to U.S. roads for real-world testing with limited number of vehicles.
With nobody in the driver's seat. Just going to be straight up robots. They do talk about here. It's funny that the one thing that they still struggle with, well, I mean, there's more than one thing, but the big thing is they are so timid when turning left. So if you're at a green light and, you know, like you don't have the arrow, you're just waiting for a gap, Waymo will just sit there forever. It's like, no, not doing it, bro. Not going to try. And it drives the other drivers crazy.
It wasn't this article, but there was another article that said that one of the reasons that the national or the highway safety people are basically okay with this is that in general, for like around town driving and stuff like that, the vehicles generally don't go faster than 25 to 35 miles an hour. And these vehicles are built like tanks. So the chance of injuring a passenger at 25 to 35 miles an hour is basically zero. So even if the software
The
is
people
garbage,
outside of the car.
Yeah, the
though.
other car is a problem.
Or the people on the bike.
The
as
plebs
case
who
may
are
be.
still piloting their own cars.
pedestrians.
And speaking of driverless cars, Waymo, now the last time Waymo checked in, we had an article about this, 3 million. But now, 10 million. So they're racking up the miles.
10 million miles on public roads. And these are like, this is not like a driver experiencing 10 million miles of road driving. They are collecting millimeter scale maps of the road around them and the intersections and other vehicles. And like, it is, imagine having like a absolutely perfect recall of all of that. And that's what they have.
Pretty cool. Again, turning left, still an issue. Man, I would be so pissed. It drives me crazy when people take too long to turn left. Because I feel like it's a really good measure of intelligence. How
To
long
understand if there's a gap.
how long it takes you, if you're the first car, how long it takes you after the light turns green to begin your turn. That's a good one. If you're not the first car, the distance between you and the car in front of you. If there's ever 2 car lengths between you and the car in front of you turning left, pull off the side of the road and eat your keys. Because you don't belong in this world.
But I'm not hungry.
Level 1 engagement challenge. Look for that pattern in the traffic around you and report back.
You should already, I'm sure they already noticed, unless you're the problem.
There's a horrible intersection around here where, like, if you want to turn left, you can, but there's always an idiot who doesn't have their blinker on, so you don't know if they're going straight, and then they turn in front of you last minute.
Well, the blinker thing.
That's annoying.
That's
another thing.
There's no reason to continue ranting on that. Instead, let's talk about some good news. Now, I want to try to remember there were brain scans, right? There was lung scans. There was one other thing. At least one other thing.
For AI, like AI learning stuff.
Yeah, the AIs were good at.
It was detecting cancer from your medical records. Just passively examining your medical records.
Well, rack up I'm saying that over and over, aren't I? Tick on another win. That doesn't sound as good.
Rack is funny, but rack could also mean something else if they're racking up a...
Oh, wow. That was an amazing pun, and I didn't even intend it.
Google AI claims 99% accuracy in metastatic breast cancer detection. Metastatic. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
Metastatic, you're right second time.
Metastasis. So, yeah. Of course, all of you will notice that these are breast cancer biopsies, right? I mean, who couldn't tell?
We wouldn't know that. Really.
But they always compare them to a team of doctors. The doctors were 63%, or no, less than 63%. The AI was 99%. But sometimes the AI didn't look at every cell on the slide. If they forced the AI to look at every cell on the slide, it dropped to 63, which was better than the doctors still. I think the doctors were in the 50s.
Wow. I wonder why the AI wasn't looking at every cell.
I think
Maybe the researcher told it only look at this portion.
right in the one mode, in the 99% mode, it was like find the best possible example. But it might be better to look at both of them just in case one is an aberration. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah. But good news. I don't think every time we talk about this, it's like we shouldn't let them make decisions based on this, but certainly pre-screen, right? And then an expert looks at it after that. Be a great thing. And finally, everybody's favorite story, at least here at the Level 1 desk this week, are these fantastic robots.
I want one. We need a Patreon fundraiser. How much? What is this like? Probably $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Say
Probably all of our profits from the last 2 years.
well, right now $1 million, but once they go into production, I'm saying more like 150K.
I mean, imagine these as like the aforementioned need for the picker robots. This is going to be great. You got to watch this
They
video.
need to see the video.
Because this thing,
Look at him.
it's like parkour. I mean, it's literally like parkour robot.
And he has such a, like his movements.
His movements are too precise, so it's like that weird uncanny valley. Like, because, you know, if you saw a human do this, like we kind of adjust as we move. So like there's more of like a sway to our movement. He just like, he puts his foot down and his foot is in place.
He kind of, it makes me think of the stair scene from Rocky. Like I'm waiting
But
for
in
him
a horrible sort of way.
waiting for him to put his arms up. It's like, I'm the champion, you know?
He literally is. So, yeah, wasn't there some company that sold Boston Dynamics? Like there was some
The dog.
question.
No, the mini dog they've started to sell.
The dog was weird.
I thought that somebody acquired Boston Dynamics and then got rid of them or something.
Google bought them.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if
Alphabet.
they might have sold them again.
This is some seriously impressive engineering. It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, this seems like they're moving at an accelerating pace.
The other cool thing
Just
about
like him.
that guy is he's no longer on a tether. You notice he's got like some kind of either a battery or an engine or something. And it's small enough that he can carry it easily.
Well, let's put a nuclear reactor on him, land him on Mars, and see what we can come up with.
That'd be great. Just have him running around on Mars constantly.
He's not actually like doing anything or collecting it. He's
What
just
could he
running.
do? All right. Well, that's all we've got for government and robots. Now, tomorrow or Friday will be another weird mixture. We're going to do some security, a little bit of science, and
Nonsense.
I don't remember. Maybe nonsense is the
A
only
lot
other
of
one.
nonsense. Also got a product launch this week, so that's going to be exciting. Oh, and there's a trip. There's a thing. Look for that.
Today is October 19th. And it's Friday, which means there's nonsense today.
So much nonsense. I'm not even here right now.
Everybody's favorite. Not everybody. Some people are humorless.
That's true.
Well, this is sort of a rehash at this point, but it's time for security news, which means we have to talk about the Google exposed data.
We've mentioned it in the earlier episodes of the news in the week, but this is Google Plus is literally just shutting down because it's more of a headache to maintain Google Plus than to actually continue on after this.
And nothing of value was lost.
They lost 500,000 user accounts, their data. Well,
Potentially.
Potentially.
They may not have lost anything, but they don't really have records from that era, but they're trying to find them. They did
But-
rule out some things.
But they did try to dodge it, and it's interestingly enough, the new EU rules would punish that as a percentage of yearly revenue.
Wow.
Which this story points out. But like, when did GDPR start?
A couple weeks ago, not years ago when this occurred. This would have occurred before GDPR took into
So
effect.
does it matter when it happened
Or when you disclose.
or when we found out about it? What if they screwed themselves
They played themselves.
to the tune of billions of dollars by not coming forward with this?
Oops. I would feel better about the European regulations if the billions of dollars of fines went to some sort of police force that went around helping people make sure their patches were installed.
They
Police
also,
force. Open up.
you mean like the one in China?
Yeah, that's what I was going for there, yeah.
The other thing about this is the Schmidt testified in front of the Senate last week, right? And said not a word about this. And he was talking exactly about this kind of thing. So they're a little miffed about that. And other stories that need the horses that must be beaten further. It's the Supermicro story.
Bloomberg is doubling down. Bloomberg says new evidence of hacked Supermicro hardware found in U.S. telecom. But again, this is not legit.
Well, they didn't name the telecom. They did name the guy Yossi Applebaum.
What a apple bomb.
Baum?
Like
Baum?
apple lip balm.
B-O-U-M?
Apple bomb. What a name though.
I don't know that that's necessarily Baum and not Baum.
This is Bloomberg. I don't know what Bloomberg is up to, but they're doing something.
So they claim that this guy worked for the unnamed telecom and found another malicious chip. Now, this time it wasn't the signal conditioner disguised chip. This one was they'd rebuilt the Ethernet port. And the thing that gave it away was the regular one is just plastic, and this one had a metal heat shield because of the extra heat that the listener generated. So
I mean, this is even more far-fetched because an Ethernet PHY, it doesn't really, like, I don't know. Yeah, it still doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons. There are actually, like, some motherboards have electronics built into the Ethernet port because there's not enough real estate on the board, and I wonder if they just got them mixed up.
Oh, he claims he not only just like he found it similar to what they're talking about. Like he noticed the traffic, and then went looking, and this one was different, and it was because they found something inside of it.
Well, let me walk you through the thought process there, because if it's on the Ethernet side of the Ethernet interface, like that connector only has the 8 wires into the PCB to do stuff. By then, everything is already encrypted. Like, it's like you're listening in on the wire, okay, and you could inject extra packets, okay, but that is not a great location to be able to, like, sniff out system memory or do really anything else with the rest of the system, because by the time it's, like, to the physical Ethernet interface, all you can do is look at encrypted traffic and what the server is otherwise doing, which should be secure by that point anyway.
Well, listen,
You
take it
not
up with
trust
Mr.
Yossi?
Applebaum.
I'm just saying.
Old Yossi. Everyone knew he was trustworthy.
Everybody loves live streams, right?
Sure.
And now we have an exciting new source. Unfortunately, we probably won't get to watch them.
Body camera maker will let cops live stream their encounters.
I was really excited. Well, I wasn't really, because I don't really watch this sort of thing, but Ryan does all the time. I was like, look, you've got a whole new source of entertainment.
Police activity on YouTube is a very entertaining channel. If you're willing to watch crackheads get shot.
As it
don't
turns
like-
out, that's kind of a line for me.
If
So-
you don't like to see that, I wouldn't recommend it.
I tried to find that report. There was a news article we covered a few years ago where when the police started wearing body cam coverage, the complaints went down.
Because they know they're being watched.
Yeah, but here's the thing about this. So the argument
Citation needed.
the argument here is live streaming doesn't help that. So the problem with live streaming is if it's always on and always feeding back to a central location, then not only are you like essentially surveilling the whole city for free, but you tie facial recognition into that and you have an always on dragnet of everybody's location.
So it's like that Chinese footage that we saw where the camera system was drawing little boxes around people.
Exactly.
Like middle-aged
Exactly.
male wearing slacks.
One
Young female wearing.
One nice added feature, though, they have, you know how those things, a lot of cops got, remember the drug planting cops?
Yeah.
They didn't realize that it buffers like 30 seconds and it rolls back after you hit the button. It's going to be immediately triggered on the sound of a gunshot now.
Instead of rolling back 30 seconds.
No, it's still going to roll back 30 seconds.
Okay.
But the cop doesn't have to turn it on. If it hears a gunshot,
It's just going to be
it
on.
just automatically rolls back 30 seconds and starts.
Nice.
So
that's
nice.
that's probably not a bad thing.
Well, this weekend, open Amazon AWS instances.
MindBody-owned FitMetrix exposed millions of user records thanks to servers without passwords.
Is this even like we wouldn't even call this a breach. This is just gross negligence.
Yeah, just no password on the old AWS instance, which so many times we see it. This was not just your name and address and all that stuff, but like your shoe size, your weight, your height.
How that fitness program's been going.
Yeah, and like what your progress was and stuff like that. They lost a lot of data.
I wouldn't want people to see that.
How great is it going to be when Alexa crawls the internet looking for data sets like this to automatically add them to your profile? It's like, hey, Timmy, I see your weight program's not going as well. Would you like to order some wheat?
Some wheat?
What?
Is that like a health product? I don't know.
Wheat?
You mean
Well,
like
Wheat
like,
is the
Whey.
wheat is the polar opposite of a health product.
Sorry, I meant whey. W-H-E-Y.
I was gonna think like track shoes or
Misfire on the reference there.
Yeah.
You're just eating just unprocessed wheat.
ancient grains.
It's the paleo diet. No,
They definitely didn't have wheat. Well, and once again, we talk about security problems, and it's just repetition. It's the same thing over and over. So how about not only a default username and password, but a backdoor username and password as well?
over 9 million cameras and DVRs open to advanced persistent threats, botnets, botnet herders, and voyeurs. So, yeah. The security issue was fixed, but there was a backdoor account, which, by the way, this could also be called a sidegate account for those of you in Australia. This is a preview of what's going to happen in Australia right here. This article, this is it.
And these were white box cameras that a lot of people rebranded. So it's not just one company. This affects a lot of branded cameras. And unless you update them, there is that backdoor account that people can just immediately get into. And that when you set these up, it doesn't even prompt you to change the admin blank password default. So
as one does.
Don't put those in your bedroom.
Or do,
live dangerously.
If you want to be watched, if you're an exhibitionist, and you can even blame it and be like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that," but you enjoyed it, didn't you?
There goes our monetization.
Well, here's a good question for the week: who is still installing Flash?
People who want to watch old Homestar Runner.
Bleeping Computer is, coin miners are using new tricks to impersonate Adobe Flash installers. So some of these are really good. It comes up as like an Adobe Flash security update, and then you install it, and then it's just mining crypto in the background.
But it actually does update
it installs it.
Or install your Adobe Flash. Like, how did somebody not come up with this before? That seems pretty obvious, right? But yeah, so if you've updated Flash recently and you notice that things are running a little hot, maybe one CPU is always pegged, maybe might have a coin miner.
How long before an independent musician or artist does their new album and it's like, you can get the album for free, just let me mine some coins for a few minutes on your computer?
Bjork released one of her albums with her own cryptocurrency. Don't think it's doing real well, as you might imagine, but the album's doing fine. Don't know about the cryptocurrency.
What's the Bork?
She's not Swedish.
What's the Bjork to Doge exchange ratio? Engagement challenge.
Who knows?
What's the Bjork coin called? Is it Bjork coin?
It's called something else, I think. I can't remember what it was, but she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna release it with all the other weird stuff that I did."
Does it actually? Is there a way to mine it, or
couldn't tell you?
Just buying Bjork's albums?
I think it's just buying. Yeah,
you're a terrible fan.
You can only mine it by listening to the album over and over again.
It's a depressing album too.
Well, let's take a trip down memory lane here. Remember the janitor who was cleaning up all the Internet of Things devices? And then there was the Brickerbot guy who was more of a Punisher type hero for it. And then there was the kid who got locked up at the DEF CON because he fixed the portal that was handing out the ransomware.
Oh, yeah, he's still struggling.
Still locked up?
Yeah.
So we can add one more to the Hall of Heroes of Internet of Things.
A mysterious gray hat is patching people's outdated MikroTik routers. An internet vigilante claims that he has patched over 100,000 MikroTik routers already.
Using HTML, if you believe the background footage in this video.
Standard issue hacking.
Yeah, PHP print bold text.
So this guy just, he scans for open router. It turns out that people who were taking advantage of these MikroTik routers didn't clean up after themselves when they left. So they left it open for somebody to come behind them. And he took advantage of that, went in, fixed it, and then closed everything up so that it couldn't be breached again.
Some heroes don't wear capes.
He claims he's gotten 100,000.
Good sir, bravo.
That is illegal, by the way. But would you ever, I hope that enough knowledgeable people would be on that jury that he wouldn't have to worry about that.
I would hope, but it seems awfully idealistic.
Well, you might want to pour out a little bit of your orange soda.
Pour one out for your homie.
Very depressing story this week.
The Hubble telescope has been hit by a mechanical failure. So it's telescoping days. I don't know, Hubbling days.
Well, it's down to 2 gyroscopes, and it ideally should have 3 to operate. They can make it work on 1 very slowly. So what they're going to do, if they can't get number 3 booted back up, they're only going to leave 1 running in anticipation of that one also failing. And then we'll have 1 left before Hubble will forever be pointed in one direction.
Rip in peace.
We'll probably know ahead of time. Where do you think we should point it as its final resting location?
Pluto.
I guess it would
with
probably
other dead planets.
It would probably just spin uncontrollably, right?
Yeah.
So,
Alpha Centauri.
Rest in peace, Hubble. You've served us well. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah. Aren't there better telescopes in orbit now?
But they don't have the name value. It's
brand
It's
recognition.
that Q rating.
We need to launch the Hubble 2 electric boogaloo.
Hubble Jr. Well, big news from IBM. If you want to, like, it seems like everybody makes this announcement eventually, and that is 7 nanometers. But they do have a novel approach.
IBM has pushed beyond 7 nanometers and they're using graphene to place nanomaterials on wafers. Like a lot of things from IBM, I think IBM is going to have to make sure they partner with somebody that actually does fabrication. I mean, IBM does. It's such a bizarre, IBM does do a lot of stuff, and IBM is not new to the processor game, but IBM sort of scaled back because the whole power architecture, and I really think that this news would be a lot better if IBM also announced, hey, we've got a new partnership with TSMC or even Global Foundries, and they're going to carry out the brunt work of this. We're going to get a license deal, and it's going to be great. I think Global Foundries honestly should do something like that, since their 12 nanometer process was licensed from Samsung anyway.
The idea here is normally you have metal that you use as spacing between the tiny little components. In this case, they're actually growing graphene on the wafer and then going in there and milling away the stuff they don't need, then placing the components between the pieces of graphene and then getting rid of the rest of the graphene. So it is a much different process, and they did talk about how those existing foundries aren't equipped to deal with it. So they would have to create something entirely new.
Yeah.
But if it works,
I think that the whole creating an entire the way that it usually works is the people that run the foundries and the scientists that are inventing the new process, when they can sort of talk to each other and they're not in different companies on the other side of the planet, the materials people will be like, oh, we've got a clever way to do that the actual scientist people didn't think of. That's how we've got where we are now.
well, here's a question. When you 3D print something and it's made entirely out of plastic, how do you measure how much it's been used?
Researchers are
Tell me,
developing,
Ryan.
are developing 3D printed objects that can track and store how they're used. I want the saw blade hand, whatever that is. That looks cool.
Well,
No one knows what that is.
That gear engages one of these two little strikers here based on how it moves, and the contact sort of reports home. So the idea here is they use backscatter to detect when certain things happen with all these objects. So here, this pill bottle here, when you take the cap off, you do one kind of event that can be detected with backscatter, and when you put it back on, there's another kind of event. So basically, these things are just sending signals back.
The Internet of Things timeline just got a lot darker.
Yeah, kind of weird. So you can I think there are not pure plastic. There are some little pieces of metal in there somewhere, but there's no electronics. And yet you can measure how much these 3D printed objects are being used and in what way.
One of the things they mentioned was an insulin shot,
Yeah.
like how much insulin you've been using.
And that used a spring so that every time you injected yourself, the spring was further compressed. When you decompress it, that's when it reports back how much it just decompressed to measure. I feel like measuring something like insulin, maybe go ahead and spend the money and get a better monitoring system.
Yeah, instead of 3D printing something from home to save a few bucks.
Oops, accidentally gave you a fatal dose of insulin. Guess it'll be all right.
But we saved so much money because we printed our own parts. Well, this is an incredible story that won't affect any of our lives, but still pretty incredible,
Maybe the
right?
news will be shot in this
The
soon.
world's fastest camera shoots 10 trillion frames a second, which seems an insanely high number.
It is. I think the previous was 3 trillion.
Yeah.
Quite an improvement. What would you photograph at 10 trillion frames per second? Lasers. Here you go.
Everything you've ever wanted.
There's what a laser looks like at 10 trillion frames per second.
It's
Real exciting, I guess.
yeah.
Well, I don't know what we're going to do with that, but I bet it's something good. Once again, Business Insider. They've burned us.
They've got to be blacklisted
They've burned
off
us.
this program.
And this was a hilarious story, too.
This mysterious website charges you 99 cents to see who else has paid 99 cents.
To view the website.
Yeah.
And every time you go back, you have to pay another 99 cents.
And then you go on the list. So if someone wants to find out if you paid 99 cents, they pay 99 cents. People are using it.
And if you want to see who saw if you paid 99 cents, you will also have to pay 99 cents again.
Exactly. Yeah. At the time of the article, which was back during the week at some point, The reporter said he was the 44th person.
Why didn't we think of this?
It's brilliant. It really is.
Because literally everybody's going to be covering this. They're going to make, when do you think it'll stop? The $1 per pixel homepage guy was a millionaire.
Well, obviously what a lot of people were doing was putting their website URL in the name tag. My favorite one was Bush did 9/11, paid 99 cents. And 99 cents is the perfect amount of money, I think. Somebody would be like, you know what, I'll do it just for the goof.
Screw it.
Why not?
Yeah.
Probably, scary thing is if you're doing the credit card transaction, like 50 cents of that is going to go to the credit card company.
That is disgusting that such a brilliant idea is enriching our corporate overlords. But what are you going to do? I think this was Krista's favorite story.
It was my favorite story this week.
It's sort of an Orwellian view that Orwell probably could have never predicted.
Well, reading the headline, it sounds kind of innocuous. Like, it's not that bad. Google Maps, man divorces wife after he sees her with someone else on Street View. You're like, well, she could just be walking with some guy. Who cares? But then you scroll down and you see the pictures. She's like feeding him grapes on the street.
Look how happy that man
His
is.
head is in her lap.
I like how he barely fits on the bench.
Yeah. They're so desperate to be together that they've squeezed on this park bench.
And they got him from another angle here.
Broad daylight.
So, yeah. The husband confronted her. She admitted that she was a filthy adulteress, and they will now divorce.
They are divorced, I think, at the time of this article.
This was in Peru.
What was the street name? We tried to pronounce it. It's like super long.
It's that was Puente de los Suspiros de Barranco in Lima, Peru.
That's a mouthful.
And I've certainly got it incorrectly pronounced. Well,
I love our next story.
who watches the watchers, right? Like, so you get the camera, right? Everybody tells you got to get a camera, get the Internet of Things camera, put it out there, and you can stop people from stealing, right? But then, how do you answer this question?
Unless you're a badass like this guy in this article.
The homeowner says the video capture that he got shows the crook stealing the doorbell camera used to stop thefts.
Because the doorbell camera has value.
But you have to watch the video. Like, this is another one where you have to see
Here
the
he
video.
is. He's like, oh.
He literally walks up, sees it, and just like immediately is like,
This looks
hell
like
yeah.
something I could sell. He actually came back. That was his first attempt. And then he came back and managed to smash it off the wall. Here he goes.
Look at him.
I like how he came back in the same direction. So he must have circled the house.
He was thinking
he's
about
like,
it, and he was like, okay, I can do
I'm
this.
going to do it. Bad news for him is
master.
similar to Apple products, this thing can be shut down remotely. So whoever he fenced it to will not be able to use it, unfortunately.
It was just a dominance thing.
We got facial recognition in airports. We got law enforcement using it. We've got the Chinese. It's on every street corner. We're using it at major venues for concerts and political rallies and things like that. So what's the next place we're going to get facial recognition is the question.
Salmon farming.
Fishes.
So salmon had this really terrible, disease.
Lice.
Yeah, it
It's
eats
a
their
parasite.
face.
It's a parasite.
Yeah, it eats their face. It's really like there are pictures of the salmon that have like the thing eaten, and it's just really.
It's like aphids, but for salmon.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad.
There they are. There's actually a picture of the.
It's absolutely disgusting.
Poor
So
tree.
here's the system. So the salmon have to get oxygen or air to make themselves the proper buoyancy, their little air bladder. So they build this little system. They come up here, and the camera takes their picture when they come up for air, and it can tell them apart. Here's the evil sea lice.
Ugh. They do look kind of gross.
They start small and then they get real big or whatever.
So yeah, these salmon, it can literally tell individual salmon apart and flag them. So they come up into the little chamber, and it's like, hey, take him out and treat him for sea lice.
They'll totally treat him and not just murder him outright.
I gotta wonder if it's worth treating them individually. I mean, I guess they're valuable enough, maybe.
Yeah,
But-
probably.
We need a biological engineering company to be involved with this so that the ones that we capture that have sea lice, we can take them and study them and then confer some sort of genetic superiority to fight the sea lice naturally and then release them back into the...
Oh, I
Then
think
the sea lice get stronger.
the reason they have sea lice is the same reason that most people have human lice. It's because they're being farmed in close captivity. So it's basically fish ghetto. If they were out and free among the water where they belong, the sea lice wouldn't be an issue.
Or maybe they'd just be like a minimal issue.
So what you're saying is we created the issue in the first
Yes,
place. And
absolutely.
This is just a
Right.
terrible, terrible Band-Aid.
It's because we are farming these poor little guys for food. And we're not fixing them out of the goodness of our heart. We're fixing them because they're delicious.
Kind of
They're
like
delicious.
our next story.
It is.
I don't think anyone's farming these people for food. But
But we should, though.
uh,
Eat the rich, as they say, right?
I thought you were saying eat the homeless.
Twitter and Salesforce CEOs bicker over who is helping the homeless more. Could there be a more first world problem? Is this have we reached peak first world
They've
problem?
received their reward here.
So Mark Benioff, is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah,
Benioff.
Is the Salesforce CEO.
It's Benioff.
Benioff.
He supports the Seattle homeless help law. Jack Dorsey, Twitter CEO, opposes the homeless law. And because of that disagreement, they began in a sanctimony off on Twitter.
Salesforce is a lot more profitable than Twitter. Twitter doesn't have two nickels to rub together, even though they're,
But the question is, who loves the homeless more? And it remains unanswered. Engagement challenge. Weigh in on who do you think actually loves the homeless more?
Go ahead, Jeff Bezos. Go ahead and throw Jeff Bezos in there, too.
I think he hates them, doesn't he? Didn't Amazon threaten to leave if they have to help the homeless?
Well, he certainly doesn't want to pay that tax.
Yeah.
And I was literally, they were saying things like, what have you done, bro? I've done this. I donated this amount. It's just like, ooh.
That's
Don't let him
do
work on
that.
your boiler. That doesn't end well.
Well, long have the authorities sought out more rigid control over the vaping industry. And now they may just get their way.
E-cig company puts Viagra and Cialis in vape liquids. The FDA is throbbing mad.
Ars Technica.
The whole article is full of puns like that. The cocky company, the et cetera, et cetera.
So they actually advertised this vape liquid here with a picture of Cialis behind it. And in fact, they tested it. It does contain the active ingredient in Cialis.
But the real question is it even effective if you inhale
I
it?
don't know.
The FDA wasn't able to do anything other than just issue a stern warning, which I thought was funny.
But yeah, so, and you know what? It's going to have, this is going to be a huge Streisand effect because now that it's in the news, there's going to be a lot of people that's like, wait a minute. You're telling me that I can vape and order that immediately.
Yeah.
As if people aren't already draping themselves all over you if you vape.
Oh, well, obviously.
You're having to push them off. It's like,
That is
good
true.
grief.
Well, you're going to need that extra stamina because of the aphrodisiac that vaping is.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win situation. They also had a banned weight loss drug that they infused some of the vape with. And that turned out that wasn't what was in it, but it did have some other sort of like stimulant weight loss. So they're not bullshitting. Somehow they're going to the trouble of actually putting Cialis in the vape. And, tell it,
If
please,
you use this,
in the comments, let us know. Do you have rock hard erections after you vape the Cialis vape? And approximately how long do those last? Make sure you give us all of that data.
if you have one lasting more than 4 hours, contact your general practitioner.
Well, we can't talk about this topic without bringing up the memory and, again,
rip
pouring
in
some
peace.
out for Pebbles, the emotional support hamster.
Which you guys may remember from a past story.
And unfortunately, we do not know the name of this hero.
Cleveland bound flight was delayed due to emotional support squirrel.
Now, he's still alive. He made it out.
Yeah, I feel like the story with Pebbles is much darker because
Yeah.
they told the lady like she couldn't have her emotional support hamster, so she flushed it down the toilet.
Which,
This is not that.
yeah.
This is different.
This, I think this is a stock photo of a squirrel, to be honest. I don't think this is the actual
No, he's
squirrel.
not even dressed up.
I can think of a funnier stock photo of a squirrel that they could have used. The one that's the meme.
I don't know the
I
reference.
don't know the squirrel name.
You've seen it before, I'm sure. It's the one. Never mind.
He's going to try to explain the meme, like the picture.
Yeah, no.
I don't know.
So this lady actually, so when you're doing your ticketing, you can check the box, emotional support animal. She did,
And they let her on the flight.
and she sat down, and then somebody spotted a squirrel, and they were like, "Oh my God,
excuse
there's a
me?
squirrel on the plane." She refused to get off the plane. She, unlike, the young lady who had Pebbles, she buckled. And she flushed poor Pebbles down the toilet.
Like, what a bizarre.
But this lady actually defended her squirrel, which is respectable, I suppose, if a little...
Emotionally unsettling.
I
which,
think either
ordeal.
one. Like,
Which-
who's the crazier one?
which might support the idea that she needs an emotional support squirrel. But she wouldn't get off the plane. They had to get everybody off the plane, bring in the cops, and drag her off, and the squirrel too,
I'm so
presumably.
pissed.
And it took 2 hours.
I've been
So-
so angry.
The rule is emotional support animals must be dogs, cats, and hilariously enough, miniature horses.
No, I don't
Can
think
you bring
all
your mini horse on a plane?
I don't think all airlines support the mini horse, but I could be wrong.
Well, whatever this airline was, that was, for whatever reason, that was the third option.
You think I
But-
could bring Rue on a plane?
No,
No.
Well, yeah. She's a
she'd
dog.
have to be certified.
She would.
Not for emotional support.
But imagine how like the level of pissing would be.
Yeah,
You could take her to that Saudi Arabian.
that's our indicator that you're about to have a seizure.
She's just so excited.
Oh Lord.
But I think the reason that they rule this way, and it makes sense, is because rodents could easily chew through something very important. They could slip into a crack somewhere on the plane. You wouldn't be able to retrieve them, and meanwhile they're chewing through the aeronautics.
Unlike a cat.
A miniature horse, you wouldn't have that problem.
You might have other problems in the
might.
cabin, but you wouldn't have to worry about them getting into the machinery.
The other big thing that happens today is the embargo is finally up on the Intel 9900 performance. And so I'm at a place doing a thing. There's going to be a lot more coverage of that. So that's going to be fun.
Guess where it is in the comments below. Actually, they'll probably know by the time this is posted.
They'll probably know, except for the patrons. The patrons will get it early, so I have to be careful about what I say.
Secret. Ooh. Spooky
All right.
for Halloween.
We will see you guys next week.